Good afternoon, everybody. It is an absolute delight to be with you here, and I've been listening to some of the conversations, and I think it's so heartening to see how the momentum of this conversation is not only picked up, but it is still going high in times like these, and we are going to be talking about that. So, 2 days back, I was watching the movie Jolly LLB 3. How many of you have seen that? Yeah, and you saw the absolutely fantastic role of the justice. I think his name is Saurabh, and he was playing Justice Tripathi. And in one of the scenes, he says, our system is bound by two things, letters and spirit. And he says, but unfortunately, the letters, the rules, the words bind us so much that we forget the spirit. And I related it to the world of DEI, and I said, sometimes even we get entangled in themes, mandates, trends, and we forget the spirit. So my objective right now is that in these 20 minutes that we have together, I am able to spark the spirit inside you to be able to do more meaningful work and more deep work. But before we go there, I think the one thing that we'll have to really look at is what is the gap between intention and impact? And then I came up with 7 roadblocks. Now, I haven't got this from any book, any published paper, but I have got it from the experience that I have been in the field for the last 18 years, day and night. I breathe and live this subject. I was a respectable medical doctor in a senior position in the government of India. And people asked me, who gives up that? Why did you give it up? How did you have the courage to do that? And I think the theme of fairness and inclusion was inside my DNA, maybe even before I was born. Not only because of my life circumstances, but I think that's what my life circumstances became for. To really make me understand it firsthand. And therefore, these 7 roadblocks that I show to you now are actually an area of great concern for me. And I'm going to be very candid today. We're blindly following the US or Western world. Imported DEI models are not rooted in Indian social realities. And for that, I'll have to give you a bit of the evolution of the DEI landscape in India. When I started this work 18 years back, I think there was no one else talking about it. I was perhaps the first to start the formal conversation of DEI in corporate India. In fact, interestingly, when D&I became DEI, I was in the Princeton think tank of 180 people, and I was the only Indian there when D&I became DEI. Now, right in the beginning in India, if we look at it, there were very handful of few organizations. To name them, the ones that I know of, PepsiCo, Walmart, Yum Foods, IBM, American Express. These were the ones who were at that time, 18 years back, talking about this theme. And I think they were very authentic. They were doing it because they were passionate about it and they had the right intent. Then came a period of imported DEI themes and initiatives where Indian organizations who were subsidiaries of multinationals just started following the mandate. And then everybody was doing what the other person was doing. Words like ERGs and allyship, when I would talk about them earlier, they would say, ye to union bazi hai. But suddenly, because it came from the West, it became acceptable. Before that, no one was listening to me. When I said diversity is not only gender, no one was listening to me. Then it came from the West, and then it was acceptable. And then came a diversity fatigue moment for the Western countries. And then we also got fatigued, even before starting. Not even realizing that they were 15, 20 years ahead of us. We had just begun, and now we're also tired. Strange. And then suddenly came the murder of George Floyd. Black Lives Matter came up. And then we started picking up our fervor again. Black Lives Matter. George Floyd was murdered in Minneapolis. Of course it's serious. Of course it's concerning. Of course it's tragic. But did we ever think of the number of Dalits who lost their lives in mob violence? Did we ever think of the number of female fetuses who never saw the light of the day? Did we ever think of the brides who were burnt? Yes, these are realities. Did we ever think of the people with disabilities who could never come out in the open, who did not have accessible places? Did we ever think of people from the LGBTQ community who gave up their own lives because they couldn't come out of the closet? No, it was not hyped as George Floyd was. But we got influenced by that. And therefore, we started coming into that phase of fervor. Now what's happening? We all know what's happening. Global budgets of DEI go down, Indian budgets go down. Global language changes because of the executive order and the legalities. Now we want to use things like belonging and inclusion, and we don't even want to say the word DEI. And as I go through the points, I'll tell you how that's causing such a huge disadvantage to us. Are we as a country ready for that? Are we ready to give up the affirmative actions? Are we ready to give up equity? Not at all. Those of us who have been holding the strings like that, a little more pull, a little more pull, we can't see it, let it go now. It's going to be a huge loss to the nation. It's going to be a huge loss to the individual. Viksit Bharat cannot happen without the participation of our women, without the participation of the people with disabilities, and the entire population who is diverse. It cannot happen. Can we let it go? If we think so, it's a foolish thought. I'm being candid. I go to organizations who tell me, okay, Dr. Niru, you have to do a full diagnostic, but don't use the word DEI. Do focus groups, don't use the word DEI. Then we are going to do workshops and don't use the word DEI. And I said, what do I do? Don't talk about equity also. Equity is also not acceptable now. Giving that extra box, that image all of you have seen, no, it's not acceptable. What do I do? How do I talk about making up for the backlog of the past without bringing in equity? And how are we having this whole conversation when we are going to tread on eggshells? And then when I hear, we did a lot of stakeholder interviews in that particular organization, and when you hear the women leaders, we have not even begun the workshops yet, so I don't know what's going to happen. The women leaders say, we still need those affirmative actions. We can't do away from them. And the male leaders say, no, it should not be reverse discrimination. It should be equal for everyone. But when we tread on eggshells like this, then DEI becomes even more performative than before. It becomes even more cosmetic than before. It becomes just celebrations of ERGs and Diversity Week and Diversity Month. Now we are getting into Disability Day, and there is no systemic change that is going to happen if we walk on those eggshells or if we mimic the West. So that's the first watch out. Second, we get entangled in searching for tools and models. So wherever I go, people will ask me, when we are doing a project with a particular organization, they ask, okay, what tools are you going to give? What models are you going to give? What playbooks are you going to give me? Tell me how many of you, when you go back from a workshop, you even look at the booklet that was handed to you? Or you even look at the handout or the tools. How many of you really practice those tools? Nobody. We are drowned in playbooks rather than a change in culture. You know how change happens? Change in NLP, we say, change can happen in a moment. If you are able to influence somebody to feel rather than just learn or think, that's when change happens. The unconscious mind is as large as 88%. The conscious mind is only 12%. If we listen in a workshop and we are very, okay, this tool, that playbook, and we go back and nothing happens. But if we sit there in a workshop and tears well up in our eyes, if we relate it to our own diversity story, if we are emotional about it, if something inside us stirs, then change happens. Then the unconscious rewiring happens. So when I walk into a session and I say, give me one full day, when they go out of the room, they will be your biggest champions. They will be your biggest sponsors. See, I'm very well aware, I can only touch that many people. I can do only that many workshops. But I have to make these people into those champions and sponsors. And how do I do that? By making them feel rather than just think. And in that one day, people cry. People tell their vulnerable stories. They come into the room saying, this is not why I don't agree with this. It should be on merit and not diversity. I've had people banging on the table and say this is not right. Angry people. But by the time they go out of the room, they say, my perspective has changed forever. Then who cares what's the tool? Who cares what's the playbook? Who cares what is it, whether they can come back and tell you that this is what I have learned and this is what I'm going to implement, the strategy. Who cares? Why are we getting lost in playbooks and tools? Let each conversation like this one move you from inside. Let each conversation leave you so inspired that you want to change the system. You don't know how, but you will learn how. There are many models today of allyship, psychological safety, ERGs, but there is one model which is the biggest tool of inclusion which is still missing. You know what that is? Empathy. That's still missing. We don't have any model for that. We don't have any way of really ensuring that we are able to be empathetic people, empathetic leaders. We're still far away from that. We recently did a summit called the Human-Centric Summit. And it was very interesting, you know, because each year we do a DEI global summit in partnership with Times of India. So Ask Insights and Times of India partner to do a summit each year. We started some 11, 12 years back. In fact, one of the summits was named Inclusion to Impact. I think that was our second to third summit. This year, appropriate language, we also had to go by it. And so we said, okay, let's call it human-centric. And then we thought of human-centric and we gave the sub-theme as views. Vulnerability, inclusion, empathy, wellness, and social justice. And then it started becoming alive. It started growing on us. And when we approached organizations to partner with us, you cannot imagine the response that we got. People really warmed up to the theme. Can you guess why? Because everybody is searching for that humanity. We're getting lost. You know, today, we are living in such bad pollution in our country. I come from Delhi. It's horrible. And then we say, what to do, there is pollution. Ho gayi, ho nahi gayi, ki gayi. And then we say, what to do, there is burnout. Ho gaya, ho nahi gaya, kiya gaya. And now we are going to say, what to do? We are entering a world of generative AI where humans will be lost, at least for some time. And they will go through anxiety issues and they will go through depression issues. 1 in 5 youth is going through clinical depression. Never before have you seen clinical depression happening at such a young age. In one of the panels, somebody said, we can't leave teenagers at home, they can be difficult. God knows what they'll be up to. We are fearful, we are insecure. Those of you who have teenage children, you know that. We are fearful, we are insecure. Which direction are they going? Are they mentally healthy? Because 1 in 5 is going through mental health issues. And then we are going to say, ho gaya? Or are we going to do something about it? And the answer to that is human centricism, where we start really focusing on human first. But it's not happening. We get misled by a few strong representatives of the diverse group. Yeah. So, I'm often asked, ma'am, you are what you are because of your story. I was giving this talk in Middlesex University, and one of the students asked me that. And I said, yeah. So he said, it's good what happened because now you're inspiring so many people. And I said, yeah. But whenever any group is different, three things can happen. Either they can be completely lost, or they can become bitter and negative. Only 1/3 like me are on the overdrive. But in that 2/3, you have lost talented, aspiring people. If the environment was right, we need not have lost those 2/3 talented, aspiring people. So if you look at me standing here on stage, coming on my mobility scooter, looking at my Padma Shri, looking at that video, and you say, wow, we are really making progress, we are not. In the afternoon, you're going to look at Harish Iyer, and you say, wow, we are really making progress. If you look at Harish Iyer, if you look at Dr. Niru Kumar, if you look at Deepa Malik, or many more like that, we are not the benchmark. We are just a few. If one person of the diversity group succeeds, it's inspiration. If thousands succeed, it's transformation. We cannot view exceptions as patterns. Those patterns have to be created. So I was doing a coffee table discussion with one very senior MD of a very reputed large group. And the person said, we were talking about gender, and he said, women should rise up. They should own their space. They should speak out more. And the other guest I had was from UNDP, Clement. And he said, excuse me, sir, we're talking about a country where these women did not even have nutrition, proper schooling. And we're talking about that country, and we are saying they should rise up, or is it our responsibility to create that space for them? So don't get misled very quickly by those numbers or by a few people like us who come and speak strongly and very nicely and eloquently on stage. We are not the representatives of the diverse group. We get satisfied too easily. We consider moments as milestones. This is a journey. It has no destination, let me tell you that. It's a lifelong journey. But what happens is, we see our numbers going up and we say, wow, we were only at 3% and now we are at 13%. We've done excellent work. And when I talk to leaders across organizations, they will say, oh, we are a very fair organization. We have made great progress. And now we are quite happy with ourselves. Why are you happy with 13%? Why are you happy with 18%? How many qualified women are there today? And then the age-old excuse of, we don't get enough resumes. Have you gone back and seen the numbers? There was a time that women in STEM industries used to be very low. Anymore? No. Women in finance used to be very low. Anymore? No. Women in sales used to be low. Anymore? No. Then why do we have only 13%, 18%, even 20%, even 30%? Why are we satisfied with that? Why do we stop? We start celebrating. Of course, we should celebrate success stories. But if we celebrate too soon, then we stop too soon, and somebody's journey has not even begun yet. I always say this. If you celebrate too soon, you stop too soon, and somebody's journey has not even begun yet. So, how quickly do we get satisfied will also determine our enthusiasm and our excitement to go on searching for newer and more innovative ways to include and inspire. We get distracted by loud voices. Loud voices of the dominant group and by the way of the non-dominant group. So what's happening now? Coming back to point number 1. More and more people of privilege are saying, yeah, it should be merit and not diversity. And what happens to the backlog of the past? That's going to be the next point. So they're speaking very loudly about it. And even people from the diversity group, let's say women. Women are also not always speaking authentically about the theme. They don't want to appear whining. They don't want to appear different. So they say, look, I'm called a diversity candidate. It questions my competency. Don't give me any extra benefit. I don't want any extra benefit. I was like that. So when I entered medical college, when I gave my UPSC exam, there was always a disability quota. I never took it. I always went through the general quota. Today when I address people of disability, I say, I was stupid. You don't be stupid. You've had challenges which others have not had. If you are given that extra box, take it. When I was in school, even going up to the water fountain was impossible for me because there used to be puddles of water. Children would push you around, and so I would not drink water. And that habit remained with me for so long. Even today, I'm trying to consciously overcome it after so many years because it started making me have UTI because I'm drinking less water. Till today, I'm drinking less water. It started from there. When children were going to coaching classes in 10th and 12th standards, I was in bed with surgeries, with huge plasters in my leg. At that time, the plasters used to be right till your thigh, and they were horrible material, and there were no air conditioning. And there used to be a lot of cotton stuffed inside the plaster, and the heat would make me feel so miserable. What did I give as much time, attention to the 10th and 12th as other children could? But I still did. I struggled much harder, and I got into medical college. I got into Maulana Azad Medical College. But the struggle was much more. When I got into the medical college, they won't clear my medical. They said, no, you have an issue, how can you become a doctor? And I said, but I can do everything. So one struggle there. Then when I gave the UPSC exam, I cleared 5 years of medicine, all went brilliantly. Then I went for the UPSC exam, and they again failed me in my medical. They said, you have to do home visits. You'll have to climb 3 floors. I said, but I can. At that time, I was not on the scooter. I said, but I can. And they made me wait for 1.5 years. I said, why did you make me a doctor if you can't give me a job? Nobody listened. It was a struggle, an immense struggle. Going and pleading from door to door for someone to help me fulfill my ambition and get my career. So, the backlog of the past is there, and if we say those voices of women, all the women sitting here today, I'm going to urge you not to say that I don't want to be treated differently. You are different. The challenges that you have experienced are different. Otherwise, with all this global noise going on, if we don't raise our voices, we're going to go right back to the ancient living where women did not have a voice. Tell me, honestly, and when I ask such questions, it really helps everyone to become aware if you raise your hand high. Tell me, how many of you, yourself, your mothers, your grandmothers, you have seen them live a life where there was patriarchy, extreme patriarchy, where men were the dominant figures, where women's voices were not heard. And in many places, the role of a woman was to serve the man. In your mothers, grandmothers, or yourself, how many of you, raise your hands high, have seen that period? Men and women both can raise their hands. If we don't keep our momentum and our voices high, we're going to go right back there. How many women, I do a lot of women journeys in many organizations. How many women today are coming up from the remote villages, small towns? It's so humbling. It brings tears to my eyes each time I talk to them. They say, I lived in a jhuggi. My father was an auto driver. I was not allowed to go out of my city or my town, little town, to study. My brother was allowed, but they said, you're a girl, tu ladki hai, bahar nahi ja sakti. I still managed. And today they are in the corporate world, standing and working shoulder to shoulder with someone who has been brought up and raised in an elite environment and studied in public schools. And these are the girls who say, I want to buy my parents a house. I want to buy my parents a car. I want to send my parents for international vacation, perhaps even more than sons. But in India, we still have the son bias. We still want sons. And this section is definitely not representative if you say, no, 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 we have moved, we have changed, we have moved. The son bias in India and Bangladesh still remains the highest. But I really say this with my whole heart and soul. I travel all over the world, meeting women of so many different countries. Just 3 weeks back, I was in Dubai, and there were women from Egypt, Algeria, Dubai, many countries, all of the Middle East. But jo jasba, मैंने Indian woman में देखा है. Jo ambition, jo rutwa, I have seen in Indian women, I have not seen anywhere in this world. We need both men and women to nurture that jasba. We need organizations to nurture the jasba. We need governments to nurture that jasba. And talking about governments, the government of India today is doing a fabulous job. When I started working in the corporate, people would ask me, we're only restricted to corporate. What about the government? The government is doing nothing. And I would be ashamed and embarrassed. Today, we can proudly say that the government is soon becoming a model inclusive organization. In fact, the corporate delusion that is happening at this time, the government is still trying to keep the momentum high. The government is still trying to encourage us all, don't stop, rukna nahi. So, next point, there are still 6 and 7 left. So just to conclude, we get disturbed by voices. If we get disturbed by voices of the dominant group, if we get disturbed by voices of the non-dominant group, the DEI leader has to respond and not react. The DEI leader cannot get influenced by those voices. The DEI leader has to be steadfast in their efforts. Point number 6, we forget the backlog of the past. And here comes the real theme of equity. There are few examples I always give, and I'm going to give them again. So to me, equity means 2 things. One is making up for the backlog of the past, and second is taking care of the specific needs. If there's no ramp, it's a struggle for me to come up the stairs. That's specific needs, right? We spoke about a lot of initiatives about maternity and childcare that the organizations are doing. But what about the backlog of the past? So 2 examples I will give. In the same year, I got Padma Shri. There was a lady called Prakash Kaur who also got the Padma Shri the same year I did. She runs an orphanage in Jalandhar called Unique Home. Phenomenal lady. She not only gives those children excellent food and shelter, but she also gives them excellent education. I asked her, everybody calls her BBG. So I said, BBG, why only girl children? And she said, India mein ladke ko koi kude ke dabbe mein nahi phekta. And she says, how many such babies we salvage from the garbage can? One such baby was found in the mouth of a dog, and the entire back had been bitten off. This is recent. So if we think things have changed, think again. Now taking another aspect of diversity, the social mobility, people who cannot communicate in English. I was coaching a person, a male, who was not good in English. His communication was not great. And he used to get panic attacks each time he had to do a presentation or go to a meeting. His manager, with good intentions but lack of knowledge, kept telling him, yehi present karega. I will make sure he gets the confidence. But he used to get such panic attacks that it used to mimic a heart attack. I sent him to a psychiatrist. He was started medication. One day, I was on a flight taking off to Singapore, and I got a call from him. And he says, ma'am, I'm in a very big panic. I have a presentation tomorrow. And he was hyperventilating. He was in a really bad state. And I said to him, go to the doctor immediately. By the time I landed, he had committed suicide. No other reason. Just the gap between the communication. How can we say that we cannot give equity? How can we say that we don't have to make up for the backlog of the past? We do. Finally, last point. Power distance perpetuates status quo. So what's happening now? See, it's human. It's not bad. It's human for us. It's called status quo bias. It's human for us to say that we want to remain in the place where we are, but people, I'm talking about the people of privilege. Sometimes young women come and tell me, I think male leaders support me more than female leaders. I said, wait till you get to the top. When you really get to those critical positions, the competition and the stakes are high, the bias will show up like never before. Because we want to support till the time it doesn't, jab tak hamari kursi nahi hilti. The moment we have to share the space, we get anxious. And then consciously or unconsciously, we do everything to destabilize. If leaders learn that being uncomfortable is not being excluded, sharing the space is not being replaced. If we give up fear and embrace expansion, everyone will benefit. So I want to come back to where I began. If we go after the words, if we go after, our leader says this, so we have to do this. If DEI is in the hands of people who are fearful, if it is HR only and not business, if the leaders are now fearful and insecure themselves, we're going to be in a sad place. DEI is just going to be one colorful poster on the wall, 1 week in the year, and that's it. But if we really want to move the spirit, then inclusion begins with I. Then each one of us here takes a pledge. I'm not going to be silent. I'm going to look at each of these 7. If I'm an organizational representative, I will be the first mover to do something different in my organization and not just look at what's the buzz, what's the trend, what's fashionable. I will embrace the change. If something appeals to me, I will not be fearful to go for it. If we make this pledge today, that our spirit is going to be more important than everyone, and that's when the collective benefit happens. That's when we rise up as a nation. That's when we rise up as an organization. In these 20 minutes, if this has happened inside you, if that change has happened inside you, my coming all the way from Delhi to Bombay has been fulfilled. Thank you so much.